Okay, and we're back with more work on the C4 item. So as we left off, I got most of the initial work done. We could see that the tab did load. There is an item and there's a block. Fortunately, the item texture did not load correctly, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at why that is, and that's because I fat-fingered and put a thing there. So that should load now. Yeah, conform C4 remote. Yep, looks good. Now we're going to go ahead and start sticking a little bit more code into the various places here. We're going to go ahead and initialize an update method here. So public void update entity. We add override. So this will be our logic loop. So we're going to want to keep track of, I want to say the owner. So yeah, actually the interesting thing is I'm trying to do this the hard way, and we could actually do the tile class that I actually have a Volts engine, but I'm going to avoid that just so I can show you guys the whole process of doing this, and plus we've already registered everything. For the next couple tiles, we'll go ahead and use the tile system, and then later here I'll convert everything over to the tile system just to make it easier to work with. But here's our update method. If we go to here, I don't think I need to override anything else because the reality of it is tile entities literally do not do much. At least they don't do much by default. We'll go ahead and do this, and I can actually get rid of my network code now that we actually are extending Volts engine. I just realized that, so we'll delete this too. And we'll get rid of this. Volts engine has its own build and network handling classes. So we'll go over here, back to here. So we got our update here, logic. So we do need to keep track of who owns the tile. We're just going to do this the easy way and just keep track of the UID. Player, UID, or yeah, we'll call it owner actually is what we need to call it. This will play important in case there's a faction system implemented, so that way you can't damage friend and foe. This will have to be set on placement, so we'll have to make sure this is public. We also want to make sure we keep track of the timer object, so int timer, and we'll just say 0, because right now it's not going to be set to default. And then we'll do a boolean. Boolean is exploding. You always want to keep track of if you've set it off or not, because you don't want to call like detonate twice. You want to only call detonate once. So we're going to go like if is exploding, and then we want to do like timer plus plus, and then like if timer is greater than say 20, so like 1 second, and then we'll have an explode method. Public void explode. That's literally the simplicity it takes to do this. And then we also want something like public void trigger. And we want to do like say entity player. We want to know who triggered the detonation. This will be called by the item. And that's, yeah, so we'll do like is exploding equals true. That should do the trick. I can't think of anything else we're going to need to put in here, but we'll come through and recode a lot of this later, and let me go ahead and clear those off so Windows doesn't try to keep notifying me of things. We don't need to mess with anything else in here. We are going to need to work on the render, but luckily we can work on the render slowly over a period of time. But the remote we're going to need to do things with. So the thing with items is you cannot do what we just did with the tile entity, like we're storing data here. You can't do that with a remote. This class is the same class shared by every single remote held in the game. So any data stored in here is going to be shared by all the remotes in the game. So it doesn't matter who is holding the remote, where it's at, all data in the item class is shared across all things. So if we want to store data, we actually have to store it inside the MBT of the object. So we're going to have to make methods. So we want to store the location. So we're going to do this with just a pause object. Luckily I have my own system for this, so we can actually just go like that. This stores our XYZ. Actually, we want to make sure we are storing the world as well. So we'll go ahead and do location. And I think I have some methods for this. world pause item. Yeah, let's not do that. Because if we extend that, then you can actually use the remote to transfer coordinate data between the ICBM launchers, because that's what the iWorld pause item is actually used for. But we'll go ahead and do this. So get link location, and then you pass in item stack. So we're going to return null for now. We'll implement this as we go. We'll make a second method for this real quick. And this will be void. It'll be set link location. And we'll go ahead and do location, location. As Ahmed says, it's all about location, location, location. And then we need to overcreate a couple methods. Now I'm actually going to go look at ICB real quick. I want to copy the exact methods because there's like 5 methods I think for right click, and only 2 of them actually work. The other ones do other behaviors that only work client side most of the time. So we're going to go. Well, actually, look at remote detonator, because literally what we're doing is a remote detonator. Only difference is the one we're making for the client is going to be link location based. This one is radio frequency based, so you could actually tag this to anything. Eventually, it'll be set up to detonate remote explosives too. So these are the 2 methods we want to use. Actually, we want to copy quite a few of these. So we want to grab this method. Another reason why I'm also grabbing these from here is I've already fixed the naming convention on here. If you actually go find the super methods for these, it'll be like stack1 player, and then it'll be like parm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You won't understand what any of this. I'll actually show that here in a second just to clarify. And we want to turn stack here, and then we want to turn true. So we'll put all those in there. We'll check some more of this code here. And we want to actually, we want to do this too. Copy these methods, just so we don't forget. What this does is, this says has subtypes, so that way you can't stack them. It says it sets the max stack size to 1, so you can't stack them, of course. And then sets it to no repair, so that if you stick it in an anvil, you can't mess the data up on because the anvils don't really copy data properly. But yeah, that's pretty much it right there. All looks good. Come over here and look at this real quick. So we've got to do 2 methods here. So this is basically on right click in the air, on right click of the block. So if we right click a block, we want to make sure we link things. And then we want to, if it's already linked, detonate. And then if we right click air, detonate. Yeah, that looks good. Looks good. And then let me show you what the super method on these are. So super on item right click. If we go there, yep, see, parameter 1, 2, and 3. Not easy to understand. You can only tell what they are simply because of their data type. So we'll move back here, we'll undo that change here. We'll leave that code there. And we'll implement this here in a second. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to launch Minecraft, because the cool thing is I can continue to code while Minecraft is loading. So this is our on click of air. So first we want to make sure we're on the server. You want to do all of your logic server side, because if you do logic client side and then tell the server what you did, you just give hackers an excuse to mess with your stuff. But server side check, we'll copy this down here. We'll do a server side check as well right here. And then if we're right clicking here, we want to go location equals get link location stack. We want to go if location doesn't equal null, and location dot is chunk loaded. You always want to check to see if the chunk is loaded, because if the chunk is not loaded, it doesn't work. Actually, we want to separate these two because we want to inform the player of 2 different conditions in a second. So you always want to give users as much feedback as possible. Feedback is information, messages, responses. You just want to tell the user like, hey, this isn't working, or this isn't going to work. So you want to go player.add chat message, new chat component text. If you don't do feedback, a user's going to be right-clicking going like, hey, your item is broken because I keep right-clicking and it should detonate. And it's like, well, you can't detonate because you don't have a location, or you can't detonate because that part of the map isn't loaded. You would translate these two. We'll actually come back and translate them later, but this will be like, need to link to the explosive. And then we'll do another one here. Area is not loaded. And then we'll do one last check here, which is distance. So double distance equals location dot distance to player. I've got these all built as methods here. It's really simple math. What we do is, one, we get the player location. We subtract from the current position the location, and then we get the magnitude, which just kind of normalizes and stuff. That gives us our distance, then we got our exact distance to where we're at, and we can use that for checks. In this case, we're going to go, if distance is less to 100, and we'll go to do, make a note here. Always a good idea to leave notes for yourself, that way you can come back when you're bored or something and be like, hey, I got more work to implement. And it'd be like out of range. And of course we're going to add the distance to this too. That way people know how far the range is. Actually we do this limited to 100 meters. Distance is... Now, of course, if we were making a realistic mod, we wouldn't actually tell them what the distance is, and we wouldn't tell them what the limits were. It would be like, click, click, and nothing happens. It'd be like, it seems that you're out of range or something. You do like a mental note. But in this case, we are making content that is actually designed to be video game-based content, in which we want to inform the users as much as possible what's going on. In this case, we also want to do, okay, block equals location.getBlock. If block equals, actually, we don't need to get the block. We actually want to get the tile entity. So we go tile entity, tile equals location.getTileEntity. And then we just got to import this. The reason we're getting the tile instead of the block is you could check the block, but then you're going to have to get the tile anyways. In this case, we can do tile instance of tile entity explosive. And then we can call tile.explode. Or not explode. Did I actually explode we want? Oh, we want trigger is what we want. And then we want to tell what player just triggered it. So there you go. That's all set up. This is literally all the code we need to set up a remote detonator. It's really quick. Surprisingly, people are like, oh, that's not a lot of code. We'd actually need to abstract this to a separate method, but I can cheese it real quick. So what we want to do is we also want to do something here real quick, is check to see what the tile entity is at the location we just clicked. So tile equals world.getTileEntity x, y, and z. By the way, this method up here, which is location.getTileEntity, is the same as this method right here. The only difference is this has been wrappered to a call, which then actually does a lot of other things. It checks if the world isn't null. It checks to make sure things aren't invalidated. It's actually supposed to check to see if the chunk is loaded, but all that code has not been implemented yet. The chunk loading thing is something that's only been recently added here a couple months ago, and is something that still needs to be worked on. Tile. Dude, that's like literally tile does not equal null, because if you right click a tile, there's likely you have logic in place. And then we just do else. If we're on the else condition, we then want to call on item, right click, then we pass it stack, player, and it's actually world is before player. And this way we just recycled our code, so we don't have to double use code here. And this will call this code, and then in here we want to go if tile is instance of tile and explosive. And we'll make a note here because somebody's going to actually ask this question eventually. Okay, there we go. So in this case, if we right-click a tile explosive, we want to then go set link location, and then we would go stack, and then new location, world x, y, and z. Now it's a bit more work we want to do with this as well. We're going to want to keep some kind of passcode system for the remote detonator. That way you guarantee these two are linked with each other, and then somebody doesn't just go in and set the location of the remote detonator and then detonate things. It'll just be a randomized short that just saves with the tile entity. We'll go ahead and open this up, and we'll make sure everything's loaded. We're not going to test the functionality right away because we still got to code in a few pieces. Actually, I need to go back to here and click Alt-R so it reloads. Now, the Alt-R key binding is not a default key bind for IntelliJ. It's one I've manually set for the reload process. In order to do the reload process, you would have to go up here. I don't remember where it is. It's one of these keys up here that you can actually reload everything. Might actually be under the build object, but it's somewhere up there. But it was such a task to keep finding it and clicking it that I made a hotkey for it. Really useful to actually edit hotkeys as needed. Okay, so we've got our remote here. Not the most prettiest looking item, but it'll do the trick. So we can actually right click with this, we can left click. But if we put a C4 block down, I believe it'll actually... Okay, you need to link the explosive. So yeah, we don't have a linking here. So now we need to make sure we save the data. And of course, I'm going to get emails for like the next hour because I don't get it why like a whole bunch of companies are like, hey, we're going to email you in the morning. Just, But so we're going to set the location. So we want to go if stack.get tag compound equals null. We want to set the tag compound. Dot set tag compound new MBT tag compound. We then want to go stack.get tag compound. Actually, we can do it this way. MBT tag compound. Actually, no, wait. We have a location. I could do this real easy. Set tag location and then location dot to MBT. This is real easy because I have a whole bunch of prefabs built up. It saves a lot of time. The actual code to do this isn't much harder. What you do is you go right to MBT and you just literally go like, hey, we're going to save the X position, Y position, and Z position. And then it also saves the world if we were actually in the proper class. We're in the abstract pos class because the 2MBT is built into here, but then this is written in the location class to produce the proper results. And then when we want to go rebuild it, we would go if stack.get tag compound does not equal null, and stack.get tag compound dot has key and then location. You want to make sure that these two match each other because what you're doing is essentially writing data into a location like a hash map. Then you want to return. Speaking of which, I think my phone vibrated. No, not that phone. Okay, neither phone has a message on it. Oh well. Go new location, and then you want to do stack.get tag, and then get compound tag, and then you pass in the name of the compound tag. This will, in theory, rebuild a location, and unless somebody goes through and messes with this data, this should always work. There are rare cases where this will crash, but you really don't need to check with them for him because if somebody fucks up the data, that's on them. Only in really special cases should you actually fix data corrections. Now, if you have issues where I believe Equivalent Exchange likes to mess with MBT data, you might actually want to start checking this. But in this exact case, that should not be a problem. But this is implemented. If I reload this, this will work. So if I actually right-click, which I need to add a feedback message to that. So I need to do, we'll just copy this. And this will confirm that it actually has been set properly. So we'll go do this real quick. And then we right click. Oh, it doesn't seem to be working. Debug for the win. So we'll do this real quick. Okay, so that has triggered our debug code. And I need to close this so this does not tab open every time I click tab. That's another project I'm working on for a client. I'm trying to figure out what's causing his software to fail. Huh. Oh, that's weird. Is that not being fired server side? You know what? I actually need to transfer this code down to here. I put this here. That's the reason I said there's multiple methods for right click, and then some of these work, some of these do not, and then you just kind of have to deal with the whole thing. And this isn't working for some reason. You know what? I could do shift right click and it probably work. Nope, it's not working still. Let me hit reload, make sure it reloaded, and then we'll put a little notation up here to see why it's not. This method's not calling at all. I believe I need to return false on this one. I actually need to just start writing a documentation on what's the difference between these two methods so I never forget. Okay, so that's being called. Okay, that's our client side. Aha, we got our server side call. So yeah, we've got a tile. The tile's not null, it's explosive at location to add to output. Cool, that is working now. So this is a client side. It's where I said some of these actually only work client side. This is an example of one. Okay, location set. So we click that and that works every single time. Now if we click right click, it probably has worked. We're not going to test each one of these because the reality of it is I don't really want to. It takes forever to test everything. Some of these you just kind of assume they do work because a few of these are just never going to fail. So we got a location, we know we got a location, the chunk is loaded, the distance is good, and then it's been triggered. And we want to put a line here because there's no feedback. Always want to do some kind of feedback. Now this can be replaced with audio feedback, although we want to keep in mind when doing audio and visual feedback that not everybody is equal. There are people that do play this game that are deaf. There are people that do play this game that are colorblind. If you put audio effects, you're going to want to put some kind of visual equivalency or textual base equivalency. If you put either of those, you got to remember that people can't see colors. I'm actually technically one of those. I have trouble seeing red occasionally. But if we click this, remove our debug line because we don't need that anymore. Click this, and we should have seen a trigger event. Explosive has been triggered. Now this has ticked, and this has most likely been told to go off at this point. We're not going to worry about that though, because the next thing we're going to work on, because the detonator is now completely finished, and this is literally everything we need, I may come back here and add that special key code to make sure that you can't just remotely set off explosives with anything. But we're going to close a few of these, and we are going to come over to our render code. So we have our block explosive. Actually, this is not the class I want. I want this one. So right now we're just rendering a standard cube that is being set to whatever. Let me go to this method real quick. Yeah, we're going to want to transition this to render block. And then we want to pass in the render we're currently using. We then want to trick it into whatever block we want it to render as. So I'm thinking TNT right now. So blocks.tnt. And then we want to, of course, pass in the location we're at, X, Y, Z. And I need to make sure, do these icons actually give a crap if we have the override here? Yeah, we're gonna have to pass in an icon in. Because we're actually calling the actual block render. If I was calling with my utilities actually will go like, oh, if you don't have that, we'll default to stone. So we want blocks to D, then we want to get icon, and then we want to be like 0, 0. This will render literally the same icon on all sides. So if we actually reload this, and ignoring the fact that this renders like crap, if we break this and place it back down, we have a TNT block now. Now, for those who've never modded before, this is not the way you actually make your blocks work render-wise. I'm doing special handling for the simple fact that I want to do something a little unique and complex. So I want to resize this. And yeah, we'll just put that method in there, it doesn't matter. That's one of the things I was talking about, by the way, is how this is actually only updates when you change it. Is you notice I actually changed the render size. Nothing's happened. Now if I pick this up and I place it, boom, it has changed size. Now that's about the size I want that, but now I've got to move it because I don't want it to be that high off the ground. So we want to change this to 0, and then we want to shave 3 off this, and we want to change this to 4. And we'll redo that real quick. And then move down the bottom. Now the fact we can see through the world, this is because I haven't set the block as non-opaque. Right now the world thinks it's opaque, which means it thinks that you cannot see through it. But because we've changed the render size of it, but have not changed the bounding box, because it still thinks it's a full block at size, it's going to render like this. Now of course I'm going to go through and change the bounding box. I'm going to go do a whole bunch of other stuff to make sure that it actually is correct, and that way you can like shoot guns through it and stuff like that. But right now we're just trying to get the basic render done, that way I can move on real quick and call this pretty much an end, because reality is there's not a lot to really do here. So we're going to do the detonator part because, of course, this is our C4. I'm going to get a texture for this that looks whitish, probably like clay. Actually, you know what? It's actually not a horrible idea. Just do that real quick. I'll make it look like clay. Maybe I don't have to do any special textures. So we want to bring this in size-wise. I want to say we'll make this a 4. We don't want to make that an 8 because we're going to bring it in. Actually, we'll do a 3 here. We'll do a 7 here. That'll make it exactly 6. If we do 0.5 and actually change this to 0.65, it should get a little smaller. And we want to do that on both of these, so we'll change this to 35, and we want to change this to 0.65. We definitely want this to be 0.4, that way it's right on the top of this, and that means we need to change our height to 6. Now this is the hardest way to probably do rendering, by the way, is because you're actually manually setting the render bounds, and I actually forgot to put one of these down here. So we want to render this as, we'll say, cold block, because that's actually, I want like a black remote detonator thing on the top. In this case, I gotta wait on textures anyway. So what will happen is when I'll come back through here and I'll actually put proper textures on this, and then it'll work properly. Okay, that's all good. Now all I have to do is update the render, and boom, we got a little thing there. Now that's not exactly what I want it to look like, so we need to drop it down by 1 on the pixel height, and that should be close enough. Yeah, it looks like what you would expect a remote detonator to look like. Now, of course, you got to keep in mind I'm going to put textures on this. There's going to be rotation value. This is one of the things we're going to use the tile entity for, is because I can, with the metadata, I've only got 16 values, and you can't do 24 rotations with 16 values. What I mean by 24 rotations is we've got 6 sides of the block. Each side then has 4 edges, and you want the remote detonator to kind of be configurable. Actually, you know what? We can probably get away with a little bit less. Nah, we'll do it with all sides. Let people be creative. On these sides, most likely up is going to be the default. It's only when you get down to this side is when you're going to have to do all 4 sides. That gives me 12 if I consider the fact there's 4 on this side. Actually, that's only 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Then therefore that's 8. You know what? I can actually get away with it. I can use the metadata. Because then I can just say on these sides it's always pointing up, but it's only on these sides of when we need to give it crap on what it's doing. And I'll mess with that myself, because me recording myself messing with all that is just going to be obnoxious. If I can show an example of this, you literally start having to do this stuff. You have to start doing switch statements, and you just have to sit here and manually adjust what these look like, manually adjust. And this is just, by the way, as I mentioned, this is only renders 3 components. You have your output component, you have your input component, you have your main machine core, and then you have your frame up here. So technically there's 4, but the frame is always rendered. The rest of this is only rendered if the thing is functional. But there you go. That's pretty much it. And let me make it explode real quick before I cut this video off. So go over here real quick, and we're going to break this before we code anything, because I'm guaranteed if I actually put that down and click that, it will blow up. I believe all I have to do is call world.createExplosion. XYZ boolean, and I'm going to click find usage on this. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay, so it's going to be null. I'm going to hope the game doesn't crash. X, Y, Z, and we're going to adjust these by 0.05 because these X coordinates are at the very corner of the block. And then we want to do true because we want to damage blocks. So, and oh yeah, we got to set our size. So 3 is a creeper size. Let's say this is an 8. Now I may actually come back through here and I may use the explosive system from Volt's engine. Right now we're using Minecraft explosions. Minecraft explosions are kind of crap. We want to use Volt's engine explosive system here later, but I don't want to go code an explosive handler for that or do anything else. I just want to go ahead and just get this done with. Not to say I'm being lazy, because I will come back and actually properly implement everything, but we just kind of want to make it work. There we go. Remote detonator. Under 2 hours of work. Completely done. I probably could have made that faster, but slacking off a little bit there. But yeah, that works. Now I just got to implement some custom handling for damage, rotation, proper textures, a little more rendering, tooltips. Tooltips are important. Like, there's no tooltips on here, and I go like, hey, how am I supposed to use this? You can't rely on a wiki to explain how to use this. You gotta add tooltips saying like, hey, right-click the link, right-click to detonate, and that's legitimately it. And that's it. That's the end of that. So I'll go ahead and upload this here, and see you guys later.